Ciao a tutti. Benvenuto a tutti. Allora, per prima cosa lanciamo il video e vi accogliamo in Elis virtualmente. Prego. Ciao Alf e benvenuti a tutti i nostri ospiti di oggi. Hi Michele, very nice to have you here with us. And every time that I watch this video, I'm impressed by the massive variety of initiatives gathered by the passion for educating people from a technical and human perspective. And as you may know, Michele and Ralph, we were born more than 60 years ago as a non-profit organization. And for the last 30 years, we have been a consortium of large companies that share the aims of impacting society. Every year, one of the CEO of our enterprises take the leadership of the consortium and launch a new initiative to solve collective problem. But before entering and giving the word to our guest, Michele, why don't you try to introduce a very tough task I'm going to give you? Why don't you try to introduce a little bit Alf Rehn and how did you give us the opportunity to have this special guest with us?
Lasciatemelo dire in italiano. Buongiorno a tutti e grazie per questa presenza. It's not the first time that we have the pleasure of being hosted in events with Alice. It's always very interesting. You really do a great job and events that are wonderfully participated and organized. And I think Alice is doing really a fantastic job both towards young people, young generations, and towards companies and managers to help people at every level to develop their skills and their competencies to improve themselves and to better afford, to better face new challenges that life and work give to us. This is the same mission that we have in our smaller dimension as a publishing company. Roy Edizioni is a pretty young publishing company since we have been active for 5 years now, and it's a very short time for a publishing company, but we have done almost 100 books until now, and we are going we are keeping this pace, and we are doing it also more quick. And we are our mission is to publish books for personal and professional development. To do this, we publish very good international authors in management, in personal development. Like, for example, we published Seth Godin. Also, his most recent book is in our collection, and his most famous book, Purple Cow, is going to be in our collections in a few days. And other authors. It was great to publish Alf Rehn. Alf Rehn's book Innovare Davvero, to innovate really, to really innovate, because this is I think, wonderful book. Alf Rehn is a professor and a scholar on innovation, creativity. He's one of the voices in Europe, of the more interesting and original voices in Europe about innovation, about creativity, and he has already published other books that have been published in Italy with success. And this book was very original and very important to me, because he said, as he will explain better than me, a lot of people speak of innovation, but it's like a noise. We don't really know more how to really innovate. So he gave his advice, and it's a very deep and original advice on this. I don't want to spoiler anymore and to anticipate anymore. I think he will explain to us. Thank you, and welcome, Alf Rehn.
Thanks, Michele. And now I ask to have Alf Rehn with us on the stage.
Hello, benvenuti a tutti. Delightful to be here. Delightful to be working with Elis and Michele, of course. Michele is a dear old friend at this point, and it is a true pleasure to be able to take part in this. And let me start by saying that I love the format this has, because far too often an author is just asked to be brought onto a stage and can you talk about your book in general, and then you come and say the same tired old things that often a PR agency has told you to say. Elis is different, and Roy Edison is different. So when they suggested I would come and have students actually interview me, I immediately said yes, of course, because that's sort of why I wrote the book. Michele was very kind in what he said about the book, and I would want to kind of point out that I wrote the book for the students in a very real sense. I'm happy that non-students read it, of course, but the book came from a very true sense of anger. I find that I write better when I'm angry, which might sound really strange and make me sound like a little bit of a psychopath, but I write best when I care truly about something. And as Michele sort of intimated, I've been working in innovation for a couple of decades now. I've been a creativity consultant, I've worked with innovation management programs, I've written innovation theory, done all of it. But when I started looking at our world, not just our world in Europe, but our big planet, and looked at what we often talk about in innovation theory, in the innovation books, in the magazines that talk about innovation, I wondered if we actually are doing innovation in a way that makes sense. That is, somebody like us three here, the three of us are pretty similar. I mean, we're not identical, obviously, but we are men of a certain age. We are no longer children, and none of us will be able to call themselves a teen any longer. We are relatively well educated. We live in Europe. None of us might be wealthy, but we make a pretty much better salary than a lot of people out there in the global south, for instance. We are, in a sense, very privileged. And for us, Innovation has given so much. It's given us wonderful toys. It's given us wonderful services. We all have our smartphones and can order food with a couple of clicks. We can do so very much. And it is so easy to be us in a sense, because it's like there's an entire industry out there trying to just help us with our non-problems. Because at least for me, I don't really have that many problems. My life is actually very easy. Yes, I might complain when my son is being too loud. I might complain when I don't get the order of pasta exactly right. But these are not really problems. I have food, I have water, I have warmth. I do not live in a war zone. And I realized that a lot of the books about innovation were written as if my problems were the biggest problems in the world. How can we help create something even better for Alf? For somebody who can pay for it, for somebody who can easily afford it, who already has so much. And I realized that the world out there is so much trouble, many challenges, so much still to be done. I talked briefly before we started this event with one of the fantastic students that will come on board in a couple of minutes to interview me, who is at least originally from Venezuela, a beautiful country with great riches originally, who's today struggling with a lot of problems. I have friends there as well, friends whom I care deeply about and whom I truly would like to help, but also feel very powerless. And that sense of powerlessness, we have so much. The wealth of Europe, our fantastic information technology, the wealth of technological greatness that we'll be able to create. Yet there are still so many out there who suffer. How can we talk about innovation if we're not prepared to give it a deeper meaning? To kind of ask the difficult questions. Are we innovating the right things? Are we innovating the important things? Are we solving the important problems? And in a sense, that my anger in kind of looking at how much empty talk there was of innovation and how many problems weren't getting solved is why I wrote the book specifically for the students. Because frankly, next year I will turn 50 years old. That means that I at most have about 15, 16 years left in active working life, maybe a couple of more. Then I'll retire. And I'll probably have a really nice retirement if I live that long. But my son and his son and his son's son will have to deal with what we've done to the planet. We'll have to actually struggle with the ecological consequences we have, with the social inequality we've managed to create, with the manifold of geopolitical problems that we have established in places like Venezuela, in places like Africa, in places like Palestine. And I wanted to share with the students some notions. Not just the students, everyone, but particularly young people who actually want more from innovation that they are currently given. Share a few thoughts about how can we build the kind of organizations that actually engage deeply with innovation, that create meaningful innovation. And the happiest I've been about the book was actually thanks to Michele's wonderful translation, because I got a mail from a young engineering student in Italy who wrote me in imperfect English, but completely understandable English, and said that he had thought about dropping out because engineering studies can be difficult. And he kind of said, I didn't understand. Why do I have to read mechanical engineering? Why do I have to read materials? And then for some reason, he didn't fully explain, and I never got an email back. He said he'd read the book, and he said, I understood that I can actually make a difference. And that, to me, was the best review the book could get. Not that a CEO liked it enough to have me do a keynote. That's nice too. But that a young person said, I now have a meaning with my studies. I now know what I want to achieve. That is absolutely beautiful. And I want to thank you, Michelle, for having given me that opportunity. That truly made it so much more meaningful for me. So I want, in a sense, kind of try to summarize the book. The book is basically about how can we make innovation more meaningful? How can we make it more impactful? How can we create it in a way that is more deep and engaging, and rather than shallow ideas about one more app, one more cryptocurrency play, one more kind of trinket to sell to affluent Westerners, and instead make it actually matter. So with those words, I would love to have our intrepid interviewers enter the room and do their worst.
Thanks, Alpha. Before bringing the students on the stage, I would like to give you an overview on who is watching you right now. Who are the people in the audience? As we were saying, the consortium Alice that was born 30 years ago is a consortium of large enterprises that share the aim of impacting society. As you were saying just now, the idea behind this is really to try to address some important issues. And every year, the CEO of the enterprise takes the leadership of the consortium and launch a new initiative to solve a collective problem. And last year, the CEO challenged Alice to create an innovation hub that myself, with many of the people that you are meeting right now, are running. And what they asked us and what we are developing, basically we are developing a shared program for corporate open innovation. Now, count all the buzzwords that we have to take away from our... Then the second point, basically this innovation hub is running already a lot of projects on which corporate, startups, university can design new services or solve their issue by collaborating. And then we also build for junior talents. Some of them you already met behind the stage just before, but now we are going to meet them on the stage, that contaminate the corporate with their freshness. And today I'm really delighted to share this hour with you. Our junior talents attended the boot camp that prepares them to be effective co-innovation project that will be starting in July. In the audience, you also have startups and representatives from the 50 enterprise that have decided to participate in our collaborative innovation program called Open Italy, where they share business needs, they share the scouting for innovative solution and development of POC and minimum viable products that we deliver in 12 weeks. Now I'm going to take the advantage to leading the interview and also to give you my first question, but then you can answer with the guys. That is considering that, what are your advices on avoiding superficial, shallow innovation and creating impact in a sustainable way for our stakeholders? That, as you were saying for some time, the companies more likes to talk about innovation, to were saying in your book, make interesting always project, but are not really going in the deep of the culture and really impact the society. So what are your perspective in order to work with this ecosystem in an effective way? So now I'm going also to take on the stage all the students. So I ask the...
Okay, I'll try to give a brief answer to an incredibly complex question. So, of course, the key issue is is this simply a PR thing? Are you simply doing this because you think you have to, or it looks good? Or are you truly trying to change something in the organization as well? So I think the kind of initiative that Open Italy is incredibly important, because it can be, in a sense, a mirror for the corporation. It can show what are actually the realms of possibility. Far too often, companies are kind of locked into their way of seeing. They kind of know their competition, they know kind of everything, and they kind of think that, well, there is nothing really out there that can teach us too much. Then something, a consortium like the one you're talking about, can do many things, but I think the most important thing is that it can open our eyes to just how much potential is out there, just how many alternate paths are out there. And also, with that many partners and with that many people listening in here, there is that power in the fact that you have potential good critics. That is, you have people who are capable of looking at you and asking, why are you doing things that way? Why are you still stuck in that mindset? You, in a sense, I would say that a consortium like Open Italy can be incredibly powerful, because it is, as you have an entire army of coaches that can help you challenge yourself, force you to argue for your assumptions. It is, in a sense, almost like a distributed consulting company, but one you don't have to pay for. And I mean, free consulting is a great thing. Free coaching is a wonderful thing. So I'm totally behind these kinds of consortiums, because they can give so much if we engage with them kind of in a deep fashion. So keep questioning, keep challenging each other, and be open to these questions and to these challenges. That's kind of the brief advice I would give.
In the meantime, that we would like to have you here physically, I'm really glad that on the stage there are also our pride, our students that are coming from different programs. Some of them are in the boot camp of innovation, others from a master on the HR competences. I would like them to introduce themselves for all the audience and give some backgrounds, and then going deep in taking all the things that we can take from Alf in 1 hour. So guys, it's your turn. Julie, you want to be the first?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Julian Chiarabirle. I'm 25, and although my name may mislead you, I'm from Rome. I'm one of the co-founders of Millennial Entrepreneurs Association. I'm a graduating student in Entrepreneurship and Innovation for Sustainability Master of LUMSA University here in Rome. And currently I'm an intern and aspiring innovation consultant in Open Italy. Thank you.
Thanks. Francesca.
Yes, hello everyone. Spoiler alert, I'm the Venezuelan student. I'm from Caracas, born and raised, but I'm living in Rome right now. I'm 25 years old. I'm a development and educational psychologist. And right now, as Luigi said, I'm a student of the Master in HR Academy. And Alf, I want to say that it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you so much for being here.
Likewise.
Giulio.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to present myself briefly. I recently graduated and I joined the bootcamp. I'm now in the Ellis Innovation Bootcamp. And I am deeply interested in innovation, disruptive innovation, in particular the impacts of AI on society, on the entire society, and the consequences that it will have in the following years and decades. And so that's it. Thank you. I leave the floor to David. Okay, we'll go on.
Thank you, Giulio. Good evening. I'm David Harrison Pearl II. I'm 25 years old, and I'm a freelance graphic and experience designer. I recently graduated in human-computer interaction from the University of Trento, and now I'm currently participating in the Senior Innovation Consultant camp with Julian and Julian.
Good. Yes, Giulio already stated his question, maybe, or is he going to already to give some
I'm ready.
ideas?
If you want, I'm ready. Anytime.
I see it. Go.
Okay. So I analyzed the book in depth, but I wanted to focus on 2 chapters in particular. So I took the 3rd and the 4th chapter. First, I will start with the 4th chapter. And first of all, thank you for being asked today. But my first question was, in the 4th chapter, which is titled The Imagination Premium, Pushing Beyond Fatigue and Thinking Beyond Boundaries, you talk about good and bad engineers, providing the example of Nokia. So in the case of this once well-known telecommunication company, you argue that too much emphasis was placed on data while long-term vision was completely overlooked. So my question is, are we witnessing the same trend with other companies and other sectors as well in the current decade, such as, for example, the automotive? I'm thinking about Tesla, which is leading the way, probably, and others are going to follow. I saw Volkswagen, for instance, is starting to say something about these things, and it wants to develop a battery. But I mean, they are at risk of actually lagging behind Tesla, and Tesla is going to take over probably. So that's my thank you for.
Yeah. The question of data is a really interesting one. I mean, we have been taught, I mean, almost programmed to say that data is good, the one with the most data wins. And right now, of course, with questions of artificial intelligence and the likes, we often kind of get to the ones that we crack the data issue. Endless riches will be ours. I'm not against data or against artificial intelligence, but I have worked with IT for long enough and with data sets for long enough. One has to remember researchers actually are pretty comfortable around data, to know that you can get fooled by it. You can fall in love with the data you have, and you can become really confident that you have cracked everything because your specific data set tells you this is so. And I think that we have too much conversations about big data as if just more data would be better, and too little of quality data. That is, I'm working quite a lot with artificial intelligence right now, and I'm kind of interviewing executives and private equity firms, venture capitalists about their use of big data sets and artificial intelligence. It is actually quite shocking to see how little many big players actually know about their data sets. So I was talking to a really nice guy I know in Palo Alto. He's a big VC in Silicon Valley, has more power than God, has made an absolute fortune. He should give me some of his money. That's how much he has, and he doesn't need all of it. About their new data initiatives. And he was going on and on about, so we have this heuristic learning algorithm, and we have this, and we have that. And so, okay, and what do you feed it? What do you mean? So what do you feed? Well, we have all this kind of data we have about well-forming companies and blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah, but... And then we kind of had this long argument. And I kind of pointed out that data is fantastic, but it can also be really perverse. And that is... I kind of pointed out that if you would have an AI that tried to predict startup success, and you just give it all the raw data and do no quality checks on it, it would always tell you, invest in young men. Because if we look historically, almost all of the super successful startups have been founded by young men. Some have been founded by women, and some delightful women among them. I know a couple of them, but mostly young men. Do we want that kind of AI? I mean, that is absolutely horrific data, because that data is skewed by the fact that we live in a society where this has been allowed to go on. So data isn't kind of the solution to everything. Data can actually be horrific in that it can totally skew the way in which we view the world if we become too religious about historical data. And I mean, as Dan Pink, who's a great guy, kind of pointed out in kind of one conversation, and which Jim Collins actually wrote an entire book about, How the Mighty Fall. Every company that's crashed has done so after succeeding for a very long time. That is, you succeed, and then everything goes to hell. That is because you trust the data and you fall off a cliff. So when I wrote that chapter, I kind of wanted to say, yes, look at the data. I mean, I would be a really bad professor if I told you, never look at data. Data is evil. Of course, you should look at the data. You should try to learn from the data. But you should also be a little bit skeptical about the data. You should be a little bit critical about the data. And you should also be able to ask, well, what if everything I learned is wrong? Because, I mean, here I have to do the obligatory reference to the pandemic. If we kind of turn back the clock 2 years, we could look back and go, yes, the next problem will be geopolitical, it might be technological, it might be a number of things. We wouldn't have guessed a virus because we would have to go back to 1911 and before that to the Middle Ages to find something kind of data points to explain this today. So the really smart companies, of course, were the ones who didn't just look to the data, but also went, what if there's a pandemic? And that, before the pandemic, was actually a very imaginative thing to do. So that's why I call it the imagination premium, that you have to also be prepared to think beyond the data, at least beyond the historical data. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I tend to get a little excited when I get good questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Who next? Julie.
Thank you. Okay, so my question starts from the fact that over the past few years, I've had the opportunity to participate in a bunch of corporate innovation challenges, such as hackathons. And I've found a correlation with what you call innovation pornography in the book, because companies often use these tools just to use the slogan, "We do open innovation." And you suggest in the book that innovation should be a significant force for everyone, from first to last. So my question is, what advice would you give to companies that want to really implement open innovation?
That's a very good question. And of course, now, if there are listeners who haven't read the book, they're going to ask, what the hell did she mean by innovation pornography? Well, I'll give it kind of short, very, very short. I kind of use that as a provocative term to say that, well, the stories we tell about innovation often have this almost fairy tale-like, almost pornographic tendency. They're very simplified. They take away all the complexity of the world and just present the kind of very simplest of things. And I kind of want to emphasize here, I don't think that fairy tales, or pornography for that matter, are all evil. I mean, if in a consensual relationship, if people want to kind of have kind of their own fun with kind of fairy tales or porn, that's fine by me. The problem appears when we believe that fairy tales are reality, or when we think that if we tell enough fairy tales, we don't need to actually do the hard stuff. So hackathons are great examples of this. I do love a hackathon. A hackathon can be a great way to kind of break from the usual way of thinking. It can show a lot of people an exciting new way to work. They can be a lot of fun. But if you do hackathons to kind of say, we did a hackathon, therefore we don't need to kind of look deep into our creative culture. You've misunderstood them completely. They're not there to be kind of an excuse not to do the hard work. And two companies, actually one of the companies I sort of reference in the book, but not by name, they loved a hackathon. A hackathon was one of the things that they loved the most, but they always did them in this really weird way. That is, somebody very high up, CEO, vice president, something, goes, oh, we need to have more innovation initiatives. And then they did a bunch of these little corporate innovation engagements very rapidly. And then they went, ta-da, we've done it. And I said, it's a little bit, because of course we're now coming towards beach season. And obviously in Italy, beach season is very important, particularly in certain areas. And every year, of course, where we come to exactly this period now, late May, a lot of men, some women, but mostly men, will look at their bodies and go, shit, I'm not what they call beach body ready. So they will throw themselves into the gym. I was earlier today, saw a couple of these guys there, and they will work out like idiots for like 5 hours, because they think if I just do this for 2 weeks, somehow my body will magically transform and I will be ready for the beach. Vamos a la playa. And we of course laugh at them, because that's not how fitness works. Fitness works that even in November, when it's kind of rainy and horrible, you drag your sorry ass to the gym and you go 3 to 4 times a week, and you try to work even though it's unpleasant. And that if you do that for a couple of years, you're in pretty good shape. And what these hackathons often are, it's the middle-aged man in the gym thinking that he can work for 5 hours straight and somehow magically become a beach lion. And when I tell it like that, a lot of CEOs go, oh shit, yeah, we sort of believe they're magic. They believe in this. We just have to do a couple of them very quickly, and then we can forget all about it. It's not how it works. So use them as you would use spice in cooking. That is, you can't throw all the spices on into one meal, because that would ruin the meal. You use them from time to time, sensibly, but think more about, how do I do kind of cooking every day? How do I do good, solid, fit meals day to day, rather than think I need to kind of now rush into this magic innovation extravaganza and think I'll manage. Sparingly, sensibly, but focusing more on the underlying fitness.
Thanks, Alf. I'm going to remind all the audience that who wants can post their question, his question on the chat. Then we will share it, and if you want, someone will also enter on the stage and ask his question, we will allow this. But in the meantime, Francesca, David, who wants to go first?
Okay, thank you, David. Alf, one of my favorite topics that you write about in the book is about cognitive diversity. So the difference in perspective and information processing styles, and how important it is for innovation. So, of course, developing awareness about cognitive diversity for a formal standpoint is a key factor, and some companies already do that. But I was wondering, in your opinion, how can organizations redirect investments to make cognitive diversity a reality and not just a formality?
It's a very good question, a very smart question, and I think it belies there is more depth to it than might be readily apparent from people just first hearing the question. Cognitive diversity, to me, is the great unexplored. I mean, even after ages of brain research, cognitive research into psychology and so on, we still don't really understand just how different we humans are when it comes to thinking. Some of us are quick-witted. That means we think very quickly. We might not always think correctly, but at least we're fast. Some of us are ponderous, and it might take us an age to get there. But when we get there, we get to some quality stuff. And also, I would like to even push it further. We sometimes talk about neurological diversity. So one of the reasons why I think universities, despite being old-fashioned, hierarchical, traditional, every bad thing you can say about what an organization should be today, you can say that about most universities, including my own. It has all these flaws. And still, universities do fantastic things. And that's really weird. Because if you look at the organization of a university and the culture often in universities, they should manage nothing. They should fail at everything. But they do one thing which is incredibly smart. And they do that out of accident, cultural accident. They have high degrees of neurological diversity. That is, I would contend a lot of people, particularly professors and higher up people in universities, actually would not survive in the real world. They simply wouldn't get to where they are. Because I have good friends who are university professors who are, in one way or another, autistic. They're somewhere on the autistic spectrum. They're not socially very competent, but they're incredibly good at what they do. They can be impossible to kind of have a sensible conversation with, but they can still be incredibly smart and solve really deep problems. Others, like me, have some kind of attention deficiency disorder. We're all over the place and kind of doing one thing here and one thing there. And I couldn't manage in a corporation. I'd be fired. But in a university, I'm given a huge laboratory to basically, they say, have some money, have some space, have some students, do whatever you feel like. And I go, whee! Now, so universities are great because they take these people with ADD, people with autism, people with various kind of psychological and other quirks, and enable them to do magical work. So we've invented stuff that truly is building tomorrow. And I've sometimes kind of gone to CEOs and asked, so how many people who are socially clumsy, but intellectually incredibly bright, do you strive to hire every year? And he kind of goes, we hire for cultural fit. Well, I think I pinpointed your problem, sir. If you only hire for cultural fit, if you only fit the people who will fit in, if you don't have a program for attracting the weirdos, the strange people, the oddballs, you will never have a truly kind of disruptive organization. You will never really capture the full gamut of human potential. And if we look at an organization, and I hate using this as an example, and I even told in the book how much I hate using this as an example, but Apple has been overused as an innovation example to the point of it being a bit of a joke. But there are still things people don't get about Apple. If you go to some of the labs at Apple, they are universities. They've taken in the weirdest people who basically were living on the street. This company hadn't said, I think you should sit in this lab and you should work on this thing and we'll give you sandwiches from time to time because you clearly can't get food for yourself. And that is actually a bit of the secret sauce behind Apple, that they have been able to capture cognitive and neurological diversity in a way that most corporations simply couldn't. Interestingly, Nokia had a few of those lunatics as well. I know a couple of them. They were absolutely bonkers, but also some of the smartest people that you could ever imagine to meet.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have a space for one other question. David, it's your turn. And then if someone wants to go ahead, start to think about. David.
So referring to your four innovation cultures you discussed in your book, so you talk about ostentatious, deep, superficial, and social. So my question is, why do you believe that smart home technology is part of the ostentatious innovation culture, that solves those secondary problems and is more interested in the manner it's perceived rather than in its capacity to actually produce a substantial change. Even making it stand beside, for example, Tesla's ludicrous driving mode. Like, couldn't it be defined in a way as deep in that it could actually aid, for example, disabled individuals in their everyday routines, consequently emphasizing, for example, impact, beneficial possibilities, and significant change?
You are absolutely right, David. Also, props for the name. I do love your name. Really, really a bit jealous of it. I also want to be known with such an elegant moniker. Anyway, you put that was really difficult for me to write, and you put your finger on a very, very good point. And I'm happy you brought this out. When I kind of wrote about, for instance, ostentatious innovation cultures, the point was that kind of little matrix was supposed to be a way for a company to think about itself and to talk about itself. What are we really? Are we doing this, as you say, are we doing this to solve the problems of, for instance, the elderly or people with limited visibility, limited eyesight or something like that? And smart home technology is a very good example as well. I would say there are some innovation in smart home technology where I would still think it's more ostentatious than actually all that deep or useful. Yes, I could put in kind of Philips Hue lamps everywhere here, and then I could use my phone to make this look like a green hellscape or a pink Japanese nightclub or whatever I wish. And that might be a bit fun, but Lord knows what problem that would actually solve. Very rarely have I sat underneath this lamp and when I wish that was pink. It's not a problem I usually have in my day-to-day life. But at the same time, of course, you are very right in that sometimes a technology might come which at first looks like it's silly, it's just a game, it's just ridiculous, and then it develops into something really useful. So, for instance, I've been thinking a little bit about these doorbells with video cameras. They're, of course, in a sense, well, I can actually walk to the door and look who's calling. That's a fairly simple. I can literally open the door and see who is that there. But then, of course, it's also true that I am somebody who has legs. I can actually walk to the door. I also don't have to be afraid when I walk to the door, because whomever is there, if they absolutely want to rob me, they can try, but I'm still relatively okay in a fight. But if it was my partner, for instance, who's a very petite woman, the situation might be different. So smart home technologies are interesting because depending on who uses them and what they're used for, they can be deep technologies about personal safety, about kind of feeling in control in your own home, or they can be ostentatious little trinkets, like being able to change that light bulb into whatever color I can imagine. And my point was not to say only the things I say are important, are truly important, but rather to give people words and concepts and frameworks with which to discuss, are we solving the right problems in this company? Are we really doing the kind of stuff we should be doing? Or could we do better? So I think smart home technologies have a lot of potential. I think that they can be almost magical. I think that if they, for instance, help young women feel safer in the home, more power to those companies. Fantastic. This is a true problem. We have a problem with violence against women, even in Italy, in Denmark, where I live, and in Finland. So this is something to be taken seriously. But we should also remember that these technologies then have to be able to also not just solve our problems in the here and now, but can they also scale and travel? So can these same smart technologies that might make my partner's life a little safer, can they also be used and be developed to the point where they're cheap enough to be deployed in places such as South Africa, which has a horrifying problem with sexual violence against women and with burglaries? Can they be deployed in some of the more deprived areas of the US, which has similar issues? So thank you for the question. You put it very well, and it is absolutely so. We should not condemn any innovation just because it can be used in a frivolous manner. But we should kind of put it to task. How can this be deployed in the best possible way? How can we develop from the position we are right now to something great? We have to remember, when the internet was introduced, it was a toy. It was a toy for a gang of male nerds who thought it would be really cool if they could connect their little servers in this new way, and where they were really excited. Oh, I can get this server to talk to that server. Whee! There was no point with it. It was pointless. It was just nerd fun. Today, of course, how would we have survived the pandemic without killing each other, without the products of the internet? We would not have Zoom. More scarily, we would not have had Netflix. And I don't know about you, but I would not have gotten through this without Netflix. It might be frivolous on some level, but it's also stopped me from murdering my children. And for that, I am grateful.
Thanks a lot. We have one question from the audience. It's asking you, how do you think that a large corporate can work together to co-innovate? I don't think that is something that I read in your book, the idea of the co-innovation, the idea to work together in an innovation process. I think it would be very interesting. Get some insights.
It's a very tricky question, because I mean, I have seen it done sometimes, but it's rarely done well. Because it's so difficult often to get. I mean, a big corporation, it's not just a culture, but it's a culture with specific processes, it's specific programs, it's specific kind of silos, budgeting systems, everything. So getting two corporations to collaborate is sort of like saying, well, why couldn't, for instance, Italy and Greece be combined into one country for a bit? Yeah, no, because it would be mayhem. You can't just bash together to them. So you can't bash them together. Instead, you need to build a bridge between them. What I believe is the only way for this to work is to create kind of a very clear autonomous organization between them. Not autonomous in the sense that it has to be completely disconnected from the two corporations, but sort of to create so that, okay, so this is the project, and this project will not be touched by either corporation. It will have autonomy in that it will be able to collaborate and do their thing and then dissolve after that. And what I suggest corporations look to, and this might sound really a strange thing, particularly when we talk about deep versus shallow. But one of the most shallow industries is the one that's been able to do it the best, and that is the fashion industry. In the fashion industry, it is completely normal for instance, two companies, I truly appreciate both of these companies. I'm a big fan of them. Uniqlo, the Japanese clothes company on one hand, and Marimekko, the Finnish fashion brand, where I'm mates with the chairman and really enjoyed their company for a long time. They collaborate. But they collaborate only in these kind of special kind of instances. Marimekko creates a collection for Uniqlo. Uniqlo then sells it in stores. And because the fashion industry has always had this, has always kind of seen that collaborations, which are limited in the number of things they do, limited in time, there is an entire culture for this kind of collaboration. So every shoe company will have a collaboration with a specific rap star. Every kind of fashion company will bring in another fashion designer for a limited edition run. Hennes and Mauritz have worked with Stella McCartney. And those two organizations, think about them, they're as far apart as you could humanly consider two organizations to be apart, and yet they can collaborate so beautifully. Because they understand that it is, in that moment, that collaboration, that little marriage, it's not forever. It is the corporate kind of version of a one-night stand, but it's taken seriously in that kind of collaborative moment. We will do this, we will walk away as friends, and that is all. So don't think that it can be done easily. It's kind of the first thing. Second, create the autonomous vehicle, the kind of little project that can have enough freedom to actually achieve this, and look to come to industries such as the fashion industry for examples. You could also look at how rap artists collaborate, but I believe the fashion industry might be an easier thing to emulate for most corporations than how Kanye and Jay-Z collaborated on that one great album.
Anyhow, if you want, in Open Italy and the Alice Innovation Hub, we can give you some material for create a new chapter of the book, maybe in the future.
Love to, love to.
We can share 5 years of history of Open Italy, where something we are trying to do our part in on this objective. So really thanks for the time that you spent with us and to inspire us I'm really impressed by a lot of things. Also, I want to thank Valentina and Michele for this opportunity, because in 3 days I read your book. It was a little challenge amongst all the work that we always have to do, but it was really interesting, and we are going to use many of the ideas that you shared with us. Before closing, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I would just like to kind of say as sort of my closing, and particularly not to my delightful collaborators here, but to the audience, that I believe that one of the most powerful things about Alice and Open in Italy is the manner it can bring people with this level of talent and competence, such as my 4 delightful interviewers here, and truly bringing them together. So if you want to kind of see the power of Alice and the Open Italy platform and all this, just look at these 4. They are superstars, each and every one of them, and every company listening should be proud if you have the chance to hire one of these fine people. So my applause.
We hope to hire them, all of them, in Alice, but also all the companies are in the queue for that. So I asked Stefano to put our synthesis at the end. Okay, those are some of the quotes that our students selected out of your book. And basically, without an attitude of respect towards ideas and people, the former won't develop and the latter won't engage. And the capacity of unlearning is very, very something that really strike also me, is a key component of productive reflection for deep innovation, and so on. So thanks a lot for this. And as all the people in the audience knows, our appointments don't stop, they go ahead. On the 1st of June, we have a new book and a new guest. So stay tuned with us. We will speak about Re-Revolution and Re-Revoluzione, un dialogo con Guido Stratta. He's going to speak with us about the power of leadership and the gentle leadership. So thanks a lot to Alf and all of our students and our audience. Michele, thanks for helping us in organizing this, and see you soon.
Thanks to you. Bye-bye to everybody.
Bye.